The massive auction hall on Kepler Station hummed with 1,000 different sounds. Alien voices clicked, buzzed, and warbled as wealthy buyers from across the galaxy examined the war beasts on display. The air smelled of ozone and strange chemicals that kept the various species comfortable in the shared space. Maya Chen stood in the back row of the auction house, her worn cargo hauler uniform marking her as someone who didn't belong among the rich merchants and military commanders. She clutched her data pad tightly, checking her account balance for the third time. 600 credits. That was everything she had saved in 2 years of hauling freight across the station. On the auction floor below, a massive creature with 6 legs and armored scales sold for 200,000 credits. The buyer, a crystalline being that sparkled under the lights, barely seemed to notice the price. Maya sighed. She wasn't here to buy anything. She couldn't afford to. But her supervisor had given her an hour off, and she had nothing else to do. The auctioneer, a tall alien with 6 arms and skin like polished metal, gestured dramatically as he presented each lot. War panthers that could turn invisible. Flying serpents with acid breath. Each creature was a masterpiece of genetic engineering or evolutionary perfection, designed for one purpose: combat. And now, Lot 847, the auctioneer announced, his voice carrying through the hall with barely concealed disappointment. 2 station workers led a horse onto the platform. Maya sat up straight, her heart suddenly pounding. A horse. A real Terran horse. She hadn't seen one since she left Earth 5 years ago. But this wasn't the proud animal she remembered from her childhood. This horse limped badly on his left front leg. His ribs showed through a dull brown coat. Scars crisscrossed his body, some old and faded, others still pink and new. Half his head was covered in cybernetic implants, wires and metal plates that flickered weakly. One of his eyes had been replaced with a mechanical version, but the lens was cracked and dark. A Terran cavalry mount, the auctioneer said flatly. Cybernetically enhanced. Military designation Sergeant Rust. 23 combat deployments. Now available for purchase or salvage. The crowd murmured. A insect-like merchant in the front row made a chittering sound that Maya's translator interpreted as laughter. Humans still use animals for war? How primitive. Look at the obsolete neural implants, another buyer commented. Those models were outdated a decade ago. The horse stood on the platform, head low, ears pinned back. He trembled slightly, though whether from pain, fear, or cold, Maya couldn't tell. When one of the handlers pulled roughly on his lead rope, the horse's teeth snapped at the alien's appendage. The crowd laughed again. Aggressive and unstable, the auctioneer noted. Bidding starts at 500 credits. Who will offer 500? Silence filled the hall. Maya watched as seconds ticked by and no one raised a hand or activated their bidding device. 400 credits? The auctioneer's voice carried a note of frustration. More silence. Maya looked at the horse again. She saw the brand on his shoulder, partially hidden by scar tissue and metal plating. She knew that mark. 7th Earth Cavalry, Colonial Defense Force. Her father's unit. Her father had died with that unit 12 years ago on a colony world she couldn't even pronounce. No bids. The auctioneer sighed. Very well. This lot will be sent to the recycling facilities where. 600 credits. Maya's voice was small in the huge hall, but her hand was raised high. Every head in the auction house turned to look at her. The auctioneer's multiple eyes blinked in surprise. 600 credits to the human in Section 9. Going once. Going twice. He paused, clearly expecting someone to outbid her. No one did. Sold. The crystalline merchant nearby made a sound like breaking glass. Foolish human. You just spent your money on dead meat. Maya ignored him. She was watching the horse, and for just a moment, the animal raised his head and looked back at her with his one working eye. Maya's living quarters were not designed for a horse. The small maintenance bay she called home had enough space for her bunk, a tiny kitchen unit, and a storage locker. Now a 1,200-pound war horse stood in the middle of it, taking up nearly all the remaining floor space. Sergeant Rust hadn't moved in 3 hours. He stood perfectly still, head low, breathing shallow. Maya sat on her bunk, afraid that any sudden movement would startle him. The station's artificial gravity hummed beneath them, and somewhere in the walls, pipes clanged and hissed. I know this isn't much, Maya said softly, but it's home. The horse's ears twitched at her voice, but he didn't look at her. His cracked cybernetic eye flickered weakly in the dim light. Maya had spent her last 40 credits on a bag of basic feed pellets from the station's agricultural section. She poured some into a borrowed bucket and set it near the horse. Rust ignored it completely. She filled another bucket with water. He ignored that too. The next morning, Maya reported for her shift at the cargo docks. Her supervisor, a slug-like alien named Bakhtar, waved his eye stalks at her in what she had learned meant disapproval. "I heard you bought the broken war beast," Bakhtar said. "Stupid human. That thing will die in a week." Maya bit back her response and grabbed her loading equipment. She spent the next 10 hours hauling freight containers in the station's low-gravity sections. Her back ached and her arms trembled by the end of the shift, but she needed the work. The feed pellets wouldn't last long. When she returned to her quarters, she found that Rust had drunk half the water but hadn't touched the food. At least it was progress. Days blurred together. Maya worked every shift she could get. She hauled radioactive waste that other workers avoided. She took the dangerous jobs in the sections of the station where life support was unreliable. Every credit she earned went toward keeping Rust alive. The horse remained distant and aggressive. When Maya tried to examine his injured leg, he kicked out, nearly hitting her in the chest. When she attempted to clean his wounds, he bit at her hands. The cybernetic implants on his head sparked randomly, and she realized with horror that some of them were causing him constant pain. "You're hurting," she whispered one night, sitting on the floor near him. "I wish you'd let me help." She started researching. The station's library had almost nothing about Earth animals, but she found old files from the colonial military. She learned that horses were herd animals who needed companionship. They required trust and patience. The military files showed how soldiers had bonded with their mounts through consistency and gentle handling. Maya established a routine. Every morning before work, she talked to Rust while replacing his water and food. Every evening, she sat nearby and told him about her day. She sang songs her father had taught her, old Earth cavalry songs that felt right somehow. On the 9th day, something changed. Maya was singing a tune about soldiers coming home when Rust's good ear turned toward her. He took one step closer. Then another. His nose stretched toward her hand. Maya held perfectly still, barely breathing. The horse sniffed her palm, his whiskers tickling her skin. Then he turned away and finally ate from the bucket. That night, Maya accessed the military database using her father's old authorization codes. She found Sergeant Rust's complete service record. 23 combat deployments. 11 riders, all killed in action. 2 medals for valor. Then a note. Asset displays severe psychological trauma. Attacks handlers. Recommended for decommission. The report also mentioned malfunctioning pain inhibitors in his neural implants. The cybernetics that were supposed to help him were instead pumping constant agony through his nervous system. Maya looked at the horse standing in her tiny home. He was watching her now with his organic eye, and for the first time she didn't see aggression there. She saw exhaustion and pain. "They gave up on you," she said quietly. "But I won't." The next morning she found a notice on her door. Station Administrator Crickstall had issued a citation. Military hardware required special licensing. Cost, 10,000 credits. She had 30 days to pay or Rust would be confiscated and destroyed. Maya stared at the number. 10,000 credits. She had 17 credits left to her name. Maya stood outside the docking bay airlock, checking her suit seals one more time. The job posting had been clear. Repair work on the station's outer hull, Section 7 Gamma. High radiation area. Double pay. Most workers avoided Section 7 Gamma because the shielding had failed 2 years ago and the station management refused to fix it properly. She needed the money. She stepped into the airlock. Inside her quarters, Rust waited. Over the past week, something had shifted between them. He no longer pinned his ears back when she entered. He ate regularly now. Sometimes, when she sang the old cavalry songs, he would rest his head near her shoulder, careful not to touch but close enough that she could feel his warm breath. Maya had started making progress on his cybernetics too. Using salvaged parts from the station's recycling center, she had managed to disable the malfunctioning pain inhibitors. The change had been immediate. Rust's trembling stopped. His eye brightened. He moved more freely though the limp remained. But 10,000 credits might as well have been 10 million. Even working double shifts in the radiation zones, she could only save about 300 credits per week. She had 23 days left. On her break, sitting in the crew cafeteria, Maya heard a voice behind her. The human girl with the broken horse. She turned to find a large insect-like alien looming over her table. His translator tag identified him as Thorax, and Maya recognized him from station gossip. He ran most of the illegal gambling and smuggling operations on Kepler Station. "I have a business proposition," Thorax clicked, his mandibles moving in what might have been a smile. I will pay you 50,000 credits for the horse. Maya's heart jumped. 50,000 credits would solve everything. She could pay the licensing fee, buy better food for Rust, maybe even rent a larger space. Why would you want him? She asked carefully. Scrap value. The cybernetics alone are worth that much to the right buyers. The organic parts we dispose of. Maya's stomach turned cold. No. Thorax's antennae twitched. You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. Sell or I make your life very difficult. 2 days later, Maya lost her main cargo contract. Her supervisor Bakhtar apologized but said the decision came from higher up. She knew what that meant. Thorax was applying pressure. She picked up every small job she could find, but it wasn't enough. With 17 days left, she had only saved 2,000 credits. Then she saw the announcement on the station's public boards. The Proving Grounds competition. A showcase where owners demonstrated their assets' capabilities. Various military buyers and entertainment networks attended. Prize money, 15,000 credits for top performers. Maya studied the competition rules in her quarters while Rust ate his evening meal. The trials would test speed, combatability, endurance, and something called handler synchronization. Participants included military contractors from across the galaxy showing off their latest war beasts. We'd be competing against creatures designed for this, Maya said aloud. Rust's ear flicked toward her voice. You're still healing. Your cybernetics are held together with spare parts and hope. The horse finished eating and walked over to where she sat. He lowered his head and for the first time, pressed his forehead gently against her shoulder. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. You trust me now, don't you? She whispered, running her hand along his scarred neck. She registered for the competition the next morning. They had 2 weeks to prepare. Other humans on the station heard about Maya's situation. A mechanic named Rodriguez brought better quality feed that he'd found in a storage room. An older woman named Chin, no relation to Maya, offered advice about horse training from her childhood on Earth. A young engineer helped Maya upgrade Rust's cybernetics with parts that wouldn't be missed from inventory. Every evening after her shifts, Maya worked with Rust in an unused cargo bay. Not training him like a weapon but learning to move together. Learning to trust each other completely. They think you're broken, she told him on the night before the competition. Let's show them what we really are. The arena floor stretched out like a small city. Obstacles, walls, and simulation equipment filled the massive space while thousands of spectators packed the viewing sections above. Maya had never seen so many beings in one place. The noise was overwhelming, a mix of cheers, clicks, roars, and electronic sounds from species she couldn't even name. Rust stood beside her in the staging area, his muscles tense. His newly repaired cybernetic eye glowed steady and blue. Maya rested her hand on his neck, feeling his heartbeat through her gloves. Around them, the other competitors prepared their entries. A Thrun handler stood beside a massive crystalline creature that looked like a walking mountain of sharp edges and glowing energy. Nearby, a Valkyrie swarm master controlled 15 small but vicious creatures that moved as one unit. A floating Nephri had brought something that Maya couldn't quite look at directly, a predator that seemed to exist partially in another dimension. Look at the human, someone said loudly enough for Maya to hear. She brought a farm animal to a war competition. Laughter rippled through the staging area. Maya ignored it and checked Rust's equipment one more time. She had removed most of the military control systems, the neural override chips that let handlers force their mounts to obey. Rust could choose to follow her commands or not. That was the point. The first trial was speed. Competitors had to race through an obstacle course filled with barriers, tight turns, and changing gravity fields. Maya and Rust went forth. The crystalline juggernaut finished in 42 seconds, smashing through obstacles rather than going around them. The Valkyrie swarm completed it in 38 seconds, splitting up to take multiple paths simultaneously. When Maya's turn came, she mounted Rust and felt him shift beneath her, ready. The starting signal flashed. They moved. Rust's hooves thundered against the arena floor. His cybernetic enhancements kicked in, boosting his speed beyond what a normal horse could achieve. But he was still slower than the others. They finished in 51 seconds, barely qualifying for the next round. The combat simulation was next. Drone targets appeared throughout a maze-like structure. Competitors had to neutralize as many as possible in 5 minutes. The other entries used weapons, energy blasts, or pure physical destruction. Maya had only a standard-issue stun pistol. But she and Rust had something else. They had practiced moving together, predicting each other's actions. Rust would sense which direction Maya intended to turn before she gave the command. Maya would know when Rust needed to slow down or speed up without him breaking stride. They neutralized 23 targets, putting them in the middle of the rankings. The crowd was no longer laughing, but they weren't impressed either. Then came the Endurance Gauntlet. A brutal course through simulated hostile environments. Extreme heat, freezing cold, zero-gravity sections and unstable terrain. This trial eliminated half the remaining competitors when their creatures refused to continue or collapsed from exhaustion. Maya and Rust entered a zero-gravity tunnel. She had practiced this with him, teaching him not to panic when his hooves left the ground. They pushed off walls, moving carefully through the floating debris. Then something went wrong. A piece of equipment shifted unexpectedly. Maya lost her grip and tumbled away from Rust, spinning in the zero-gravity. The correct action, according to competition rules, was for the mount to continue the course. Time mattered. Completing the course mattered. But Rust didn't continue. He twisted in the air, his cybernetic legs adjusting to push him back toward Maya. He caught her jacket in his teeth, stopping her tumble. Together, they repositioned and Maya pulled herself back onto his back. The arena fell completely silent. They finished the gauntlet together. Not first. Not even in the top 3. But together. In the judges' booth, General Korthax, a scarred alien veteran with 3 missing limbs, leaned forward. His translator crackled. Replay that section. The zero-gravity part. The other judges watched the footage again. The horse returning for his rider. The rider trusting the horse to catch her. The asset prioritized the handler over mission completion, one judge said, confused. That is inefficient. That is a failure. Korthax's remaining hand tapped his armrest thoughtfully. Or perhaps we have been measuring the wrong things. The final trial was called the Commander's Test. Maya stood with Rust at the starting line while the judges explained the scenario. A simulated building collapse with hostile fire. 3 targets to neutralize. 1 package to retrieve and extract. Time limit, 8 minutes. The other remaining competitors went first. The crystalline juggernaut smashed through walls at maximum speed, completing the course in 3 minutes but destroying the package in the process. Disqualified. The Valkyrie swarm split efficiently, finishing in 4 minutes with all objectives complete. Then it was Maya's turn. She mounted Rust and felt his readiness through the saddle. They entered the simulation together. The building shook around them. Simulated fire erupted from automated turrets. Rust moved smoothly, his cybernetic legs carrying them through the chaos while Maya eliminated the first 2 targets with her stun pistol. They were making good time. Then the simulation changed. Warning lights flashed. The scenario had added an unexpected variable, something the other competitors hadn't faced. 3 civilian dummy targets appeared in the collapse zone, directly in their path to the exit. Maya heard the judges' voices through the speakers. Proceed to extraction point. You have 90 seconds remaining. The fastest route was straight ahead, leaving the dummies behind. That's what the other competitors had done when faced with unexpected variables. Speed was everything in combat. Maya felt Rust slow beneath her, his ears turned back toward her, waiting for her decision. She thought about her father. About the stories he'd told of cavalry soldiers who never left anyone behind. She thought about what Rust had done in the zero-gravity tunnel, coming back for her when continuing would have been more efficient. We get them out, Maya said quietly. Rust turned immediately. They moved back into the danger zone. Maya dismounted and secured the first dummy, draping it across Rust's back. Then the second. The third. The simulation's fire intensified. Rust stood steady while Maya worked, trusting her completely. They exited the course with the package and all 3 civilian dummies. The timer showed 9 minutes and 43 seconds. They had gone over the time limit. Dead last. The arena was silent again. Maya sat on Rust's back, breathing hard, waiting for the judges to announce their failure. General Korthax stood from the judges' panel. His massive form moved slowly down to the arena floor. The crowd watched as the famous military commander approached Maya and Rust. In 400 cycles of this competition, Korthax said, his voice amplified throughout the arena, no team has achieved perfect objective completion. Every participant has prioritized speed over mission success. You are the first to save every target, retrieve the package and extract safely. Maya blinked in confusion. But we went over the time limit. Time is meaningless if the mission fails, Korthax replied. He turned to address the crowd. This human has shown us something we forgot. True military value is not in speed or power alone. It is in the bond between warrior and companion. In making the hard choice to save others even at personal cost. The general placed a medal around Rust's neck and handed Maya a credit chip. The Commander's Choice Award. 15,000 credits. And a training contract if you are interested. The crowd erupted. Not with laughter this time but with genuine cheers. Maya heard human voices among them shouting Rust's name. 6 months later, Maya stood in a green pasture on a small human colony world. The grass stretched to the horizon under a real sun, not the artificial lights of a station. Rust galloped across the field, his limp completely gone, his coat shining and healthy. Behind him, 3 other horses ran, all former military mounts that Maya had purchased from surplus auctions. A transport ship descended in the distance. Maya's contract with various galactic militaries had been successful. They wanted to understand human methods of bonding with animals. More importantly, they were releasing war beasts from service instead of destroying them. Rodriguez walked up beside Maya, watching the horses run. 30 more coming in today. All cavalry mounts. All deemed too damaged or too aggressive. Maya smiled, remembering the auction house where she'd spent her last credits on a horse nobody wanted. They're not damaged. They're just waiting for someone to see them as more than weapons. Rust noticed her watching and trotted over, pressing his head against her shoulder the way he did when he wanted attention. Maya ran her hand through his mane, feeling the faint hum of his cybernetics under her fingers. An alien observer stood nearby, a military consultant studying their methods. I still do not fully understand, the alien said. What did you do that others could not? Maya looked at Rust, then at the other horses running free in the pasture. I didn't try to control him. I just gave him a reason to trust again. The transport ship's doors opened, and Maya heard the nervous sounds of frightened horses inside. She took a breath and started walking toward them, Rust following steadily at her side. There was work to do and they were ready.